Hey everybody, it's me Stacy here at Scrapbooking Made Simple with another YouTube demo for you today. As always, we have a lot going on today. We have got Inky Antics and their HoneyPOP collection, which includes their honeycomb paper. We have got dies by Tim Holtz and Stephanie Bernard. I've got some Versamark. I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So I am going to go ahead and tilt on down so we can get started for today. But first, I just want to tell you that when I was setting up for the YouTube today, the tripod and I had a little altercation and the tripod won, and I have a Band-Aid on my thumb. So if you could just kind of overlook that today, I would greatly appreciate it. I didn't want to wait to do the YouTube until my thumb healed, so just pretend that Band-Aid's not there, and I think I'm getting myself a new tripod. So anyway, we're going to tilt on down and away we go, okay? Bye. Down we go. All right, there we are. How does that look? That look pretty good for you guys? I think so. There we go. So what we've got today is the Inky Antics paper, and it is honeycomb paper, and it's very reminiscent of when you had table decorations for a baby shower or a wedding, because when you open the paper up, it has that honeycomb effect. Do you remember those wedding bells and little cupids that you'd open it up and it'd have all that honeycomb around it? So that's what this paper is. You get one 5x7 sheet per pack, and let me tell you, a 5x7 sheet goes a really long way. You'll be surprised how much you get out of it. It's $5.95, and of course we'll have it on a YouTube Yummy for you. It comes in a host of colors, and at the end of the YouTube I will take you through and show you all the colors that it is available. But of course it'll be online in our online store for you once the YouTube posts. So we're going to be working with this paper today, and what's really important is this little instruction here. It comes on every sheet with these arrows. Those arrows are really key to using this paper, and it keeps it really, really simple for you. On the colored paper, it is printed in black, but on the black paper, of course, you can't print on black paper, you're not going to see it, but they do give you a little instruction there too, just so you know which way to run the paper. And running the paper in the proper direction is key to using this honeycomb collection, HoneyPOP collection. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to die cut with this paper. And I know there's lots of videos out there using this paper to die cut with, but I'm going to go over a few things that maybe they didn't go over as well or enough, and hopefully that'll help you. Now, you cannot use a wafer die with honeycomb paper. This would be a Sizzix Framelits. And it's a wafer type die. Just for those of you who aren't familiar with a wafer type die, that means there is no actual blade to cut the paper. There is a cutting edge, and it will cut 2 sheets of paper at a time. But if you can see how thick this HoneyPOP paper is, this was never going to cut through it. It's not meant to cut through it. That means you also cannot use your spellbinder die, because a spellbinder die is also a chemically etched die, and your cutting edge is right there on the die, and it's just not going to work. It won't cut through. You can also not use a Sizzix Sizzlet in any size, not the borders, not the mediums, not the larges. This is the one that has the gray injection foam on it. It's not very thick. You cannot cut it. There is no blade in there that will cut through this paper. Okay, so Stacy, what am I going to use? You've shown me everything I can't use. Well, what you are going to use is steel rule dies. And Sizzix makes the steel rule dies. And those are those thicker dies that you see out there. And that's because a steel rule die has an actual cutting blade in there. There is a razor sharp cutting blade inside the die, so that when it compresses through the machine, that blade comes through and will cut heavier cardstock, heavier chipboard, acrylic, and honeycomb paper. So you want to use a steel rule die, which would be a Bigs, an XL Bigs, a L Bigs. Now they have the long Bigs. That's what you're going to want to use. You also can use the movers and shapers dies, because movers and shapers dies are steel rule dies. There is an actual blade inside these dies that will cut through the HoneyPOP paper. Now, what I want to recommend is that when you're using the HoneyPOP paper, you find a die that's going to be symmetrical, because ultimately you're only going to be cutting half the die, And then you're going to open that honeycomb up, and what you're going to have on the other side is the mirror image of what you've die cut. So you want to find a solid shape, the pumpkin, solid shape, and the leaves are a nice solid shape so that when you cut half the die and you open it up, you're going to see the mirror image. Today we're going to be using the dress form. Tim Holtz makes a bunch of them. Stephanie Bernard now has several of them. This is her new. She's got the new hearts and the new flower and butterfly for movers and shapers. Now those of you who are not familiar with movers and shapers, they are a steel rule die that has a magnet. There's a magnet built into here, and it's a steel rule die. It's not as thick as a standard steel rule die. They're not as thick, so you need something to make this die thick enough to go through the machine so that it will cut. And for that, you have two options. You can either use the Tim Holtz base tray, which is just one huge sheet of metal for this die to attach itself to. You can put it anywhere in there you want and put paper on top of it. And what that will do is make it thick enough to go through your machine, your Sizzix Big Shot machine. Or, let me see, here's my base tray. Here's my base tray. If I put my die in there, I've now added the thickness of the base tray to the thickness of this die, which now added together makes it the thickness of a standard steel rule die. So that's one option. The second option, which I happen to prefer, nothing that there's anything wrong with the base tray, but Sizzix has come out with a lot of movers and shapers dies where you get a die that also gives you a movers and shapers function. This die here happens to be the Stephanie Bernard's Flip It Die. So if I cut this die with nothing in it, with nothing in that square, it's going to cut me a darling Flip It Die. Cute, huh? But if I wanted to, I could take any of my movers and shapers, put it in there. It's a magnet, just like the Tim Holtz. It's metal in there, so just like the Tim Holtz base tray, it's going to hold that die just where I want it to be. But this time, I'm not going to cut the entire die. I just want this one piece. Well, I can cut just this one piece. I can use any of my movers and shapers in there, just put my paper over the part I want to cut and cut away. But then I also get the benefit of having a whole nother die on top of that. So my recommendation is if you don't already have the base tray, and there's nothing wrong with the base tray, some people just absolutely love them. Obviously I do, I have one. But if you want a little more functionality, then I would go ahead and I would find a die that has an open movers and shapers feature to it. And really the one I love best is the square Flip Its because you get a really nice surface to work with. And so far every movers and shapers I've tried has fit. So that's what I recommend. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut this with the HoneyPOP paper. And there's two thoughts on how to do this. First off, the first thought is to cover the entire die with the HoneyPOP paper. And I almost cut it wrong. See, I wasn't paying attention to my own directions. With the HoneyPOP paper, you absolutely need to run the paper horizontally. I don't know if you can see the little lines in there. Maybe the green will show better. Yes. Do you see those lines? That paper needs to run horizontally and not vertically. Horizontally. I'm going to take my die and I'm going to line my die up perpendicular with those horizontal lines. I'm not going to run my die this way. I'm going to run my die perpendicular to the horizontal lines. Okay? Now again, there's two schools of thought. You can take a piece of your HoneyPOP paper and you can cut out a piece that's large enough to do the entire shape, which is what I'm going to do now. I cut out a piece that will do the entire shape. And I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to put it into my movers and shapers base die, which happens to be a Flip It die. I'm going to put my paper right on top of it. And then I have got my bottom clear plate, which says, I don't know if you can see it, do not cut. And that's because I always like my bottom plate to be nice and straight without any cuts in it, without any bends or wobbles in it. I want to keep it nice and straight because then when I put it through my Big Shot machine, I've always got a nice, straight, even platform to work on. No warping. This happens to be the plate I cut into all the time, and that's fine. Eventually I'm going to need to replace this, but by keeping the do not cut plate there, when I send it through my machine, because there's no warping, it just slides right through very nicely. So I'm going to take my other clear plate and I'm going to put it on top. And here's our sandwich. One clear plate, die, clear plate. And of course we're going to use our Big Shot machine because it is the machine of choice here at Scrapbooking Made Simple. I'm gonna slide it on in and send it through. And done. So this is the first way you can die cut with it. I have now cut the entire shape of the dress form. Okay, got my entire shape of the dress form. And then I would just trim off the little top piece because I'm not going to need that. I'm going to use paper to do that, and my bottom piece. And what I've got now is like an accordion. So it's not going to fold open the way I want it to. What I would then need to do is cut it in half. Okay, we're cut in half. And what that does is it then gives me the freedom to open that dress form up. And you've got this one if you want to use it later. You have two pieces now. However, what happens if all you have is enough HoneyPOP paper to cover half the dress form? That's okay. That's actually my preference on how to do it. Is I cut just enough HoneyPOP paper to do half the die. Because when I fold it open, it's going to be the mirror side here anyway. I don't necessarily know that I'm ever going to use the second piece. I don't necessarily need it right now. And maybe I only have enough HoneyPOP paper to cover half the die. That's okay. It doesn't have to be enough to do the entire die. So again, my lines are perpendicular to my dress form. I'm going to cut a piece for me. I'm going to put my straightest edge into the center of my dress form. See how I'm only covering half the die? I'm going to put it into my base plate here, my Movers and Shapers Flip It Die, because that's what I'm using as my base. Another clear plate, so of course I've made my sandwich. And let's pull my machine back over, and away we go. Cut it right through. Now what's that going to give me? It's going to give me half of a dress form. And that's perfect. That's actually what I wanted. It's just going to give me half of a dress form. I'll do the same thing. I'll cut the little ends off because I'll show you what we're going to do instead. And then when I open it up, I've got the same thing I had when I cut the entire dress form. And cut it in half. Same thing. This is exactly the same thing. So for me, it's just saving on your HoneyPOP paper. If you're not going to use that dress form for another card, why cut two of them? Just cut half the die and you get the same effect. Now let me show you a sample that we did. So here's a sample. There's the front of the card. And when you open it up, bam, there's your HoneyPOP paper. Bam, I sound like Emerald. So as you can see, it's 3D. It pops up, and then when it's closed, your card is nice and flat. See how that works? Now you can use the HoneyPOP paper instead of the center of the card. Amanda, one of our customers who was here for an event yesterday, was kind enough to make this card for us, and she took half of the dress form and just opened it up and glued it right to the front of the card, and there you go, you've got the 3D effect. So it can be used open all the time, or it can be used as the center of your card. Cute, huh? All right, so I've given you 2 different ways you can die cut with the HoneyPOP paper. You can choose to die cut the entire die and then cut it in half to give you your half. Or if you're low on HoneyPOP paper, or you're really only going to use one side of it, you only are going to make one card or one project, just cut half the size you need, center it into your die and cut it. Because when you open it, it gives you the same exact look as if you cut the whole thing and then cut your die, your HoneyPOP in half. So now we've done some others. I've got some quick samples here for you. This happens to be the butterfly that goes with this die here. Now I can't do the bunny, because if I cut half of him, it's not symmetrical. It's not gonna work. You need to look for things that are symmetrical. That's going to work best for you. So I put my HoneyPOP paper on half of the butterfly. I cut him out, and then when I open him up, he's ready to go. He's ready to fly. Cute, huh? Okay, on Stephanie's, here's half of that butterfly. And when I open him up, he's just darling. He's ready to go. Add some antenna to him and some little bling and you're ready to go. So for me, I think that makes the most use out of your HoneyPOP paper. You've got 5x7 to work with, and to get the most bang for your buck, I cut only what I need. And I try to keep my edges straight. Now, how do you adhere all of this into a card? Well, that's easy. Very, very simple, and I'm going to show you how right now. I have got a card here, an A2 card, and I've purchased this card. This is a pre-scored card, so I'm going to fold it on the score, just where it's supposed to be. But to use this paper, because it has got some thickness to it, do you see how thick it is? You need to leave yourself a gusset in that card. You need to create a gusset. So see how it won't fit in there nicely? Now the easiest way to do that is to take your scoring tool. I have one of our trimmers here, and I'm just going to score a 1/16 of an inch on either side of that original score line provided by the manufacturer with the card. Now I can tell you that the Inky Antics HoneyPOP paper is very forgiving. So if your score lines are a little bit bigger, see mine aren't even completely centered. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, probably because this is, there we go. My score lines aren't even completely centered, but it's totally forgiving. I'm just going to bend and make my gusset. And then you can see now there's room to fit the HoneyPOP paper, whereas before there wasn't. I've now created room to fit that. Okay? Now how am I going to put it down? Let's grab one of these. How am I going to put it down? I've got my gusset in my card, got my nice gusset in my card, but how am I going to attach it? Well, people's first thought is that you're going to add glue and glue that in. No, that's not what you're gonna do. We are going to take some of the best glue stick I have ever seen, and trust me, Scrapbooking Made Simple does not carry glue sticks. They're not my favorite tool. However, this new product by Ranger is phenomenal. It's Ink Essentials, it's the Ink Essentials tools. It is the collage glue stick, and it's meant for paper. What I can tell you is it holds beautifully. However, it is not very forgiving. So when you put your paper down, you do not have a lot of time to go back and pull it up. When you're using it with The Inky Antics paper, because it's tissue, you have even less time, but I'm going to tell you it holds like nothing else. I've seen some people use liquid glue, I've seen some people use glossy accents. I have to say this is my absolute favorite. So I am just going to trim that little top piece off real quick. And I have now got my dress form here that we're working with, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the back side of my dress form. Little bit of glue. And what's really important here is that when I'm going to line this up, my dress form to the card, I'm going to line it to that very first score line I come across. This is my first score line right here. And I am going to line it right up to that score line. I'm not going to put it in my little gusset where I've made room for the width of that Inky Antics HoneyPOP paper. I've lined it right up to my score line, but not inside the score lines. Then I'm going to take a little bit more glue, and I'm going to put it right on top, and I'm going to close my card. And what that's going to do is that's going to self-create that gusset and line it up for me so that when I open it up, poof, it's done. It is so simple and just that fast. Okay? So what's really important is that you have a little bit of a gusset to your card. Now you can take your own cardstock and you can create your own card, of course, with an 8.5 by 11, and you can create your own cards. Just make sure you give yourself about 1/8 of an inch of a gusset. Okay, so instead of scoring it once, you're going to score twice with 1/8 of an inch gusset so that you have room for the paper. Now, of course, if you're going on top of the paper, on top of the outside of the paper, you don't need a gusset in your card because it's going on the very front. Okay, so we've got these two samples here for you that I've already shown where we've used die cuts. This one happens to be the Tim Holtz Movers and Shapers dress form, and the other sample that we have where it's on the inside. But then we also have a cute little card here, a little note card. And for this we use the Stephanie Bernard hearts, and you open it up and there's your cute little heart. So that's putting it on the inside, and of course we've got a gusset here to give room for the honeycomb paper. And then last but not least, we took the Stephanie Bernard flower, this one here, and we cut half of it, and then we opened them up and glued them to the front. This is not a send in the mail card. This is I'm going to give to you card. Because of the height, it would be expensive to mail this, but it's certainly darling, isn't it? And it shows you how you can use the HoneyPOP on the front of the card or on the inside. Okay, so quickly, before we move on, I want to just go over what we did with the HoneyPOP paper and the dies. Now, you cannot use a Sizzix Sizzlet, a Spellbinder chemically etched die, or a Sizzix Framelit chemically etched die. No chemically etched dies will work with the HoneyPOP paper, and none of the Sizzix Sizzlets will work with the HoneyPOP paper. You need to be using a steel rule die. So almost all of Tim's dies are steel rule. Here we've got the bunny from the Easter collection, and you can use all of the movers and shapers dies. But remember, movers and shapers are magnet dies, and you need to use them in conjunction with something else. So you can either use them with the Tim Holtz base tray and put your movers and shapers right in there and your HoneyPOP paper right on the top, magnet, and run it through. Or if you don't already have the base tray, I always recommend, I think, having one of the other movers and shapers dies that has the base tray built into it, because you can always put your die in there and just cut that piece. But then you also get the benefit of having another die as opposed to just a plain base tray. And again, this happens to be the Stephanie Bernard Flip It Die. This is the square. We just got in the square, the diamond, and the heart shape. So those are all here. And I think that's a really great idea because you get two for the price of one. Okay? Next, we're moving on. Ooh, we got a lot to go through today. Now we're going to talk about stamping with the HoneyPOP paper. And when you're talking about stamping with the HoneyPOP paper, Inky Antics has made lots of different stamps that will work with the HoneyPOP paper. They make it very, very, very easy for you. I want to say there's probably, I don't know, 20 different stamp sets, and we carry all of them for you. Today we're going to be working with the cute bunny set right here. And I'm hoping you can see, but right here there's a carrot, a half of a carrot, and it has arrows. And here's the carrot top with the arrows. Those arrows are there for a reason. That tells you how to line up your stamp with the HoneyPOP paper. You can also see the dashed line. Now generally when you see a dashed line in crafting, it means to score. Here it means to cut, not to score. And I'm going to show you a step to avoid that. So your lines here need to line up with your HoneyPOP paper. And we're going to do that right now. So I've got my carrot stamp right here. And I am going to take my Memento ink. Now I'm using Memento today so you can see it on the YouTube, but you also could use your Versamark ink. Why would I use Versamark ink? Well, Versamark is going to leave a watermark here where the carrot is, so then you can cut it out, and if you don't actually cut exactly on the line, you won't see any of the black when you add it to your card. I'm using the Memento ink. You can use Memento ink. It's very rare that I've ever seen black. So if you already have a Memento ink pad or a black ink pad, it's okay to use it. But if you want to be sure, then use the Versamark to add a watermark versus an actual stamped image. Now, I have got my HoneyPOP paper, my arrows going this way. I've got my stamp going this way. And can you see I've got a nice straight edge here? I'm going to stamp to that straight edge. Done. Okay. Now when I cut this out, as opposed to just taking my scissors and cutting around it, I'm going to cut it another straight edge. Just like that. And cut across. And now what I've left myself with is a perfectly straight edge for me to stamp next time. It's ready to go. So I don't even have to cut this edge. I'm going to leave it just exactly the way it is. I'm not going to even cut on that line. I've already got a very nice straight edge. I'm going to trim that little bottom off real quick. But other than that, I've got my straight edge already because I started with a straight edge. So that means less cutting. Now I'm just going to take my scissors and go around and cut my little carrot out. And you don't have to be exact. Just do the best you can. If you're a little bit inside the lines, that's okay. If you're a little bit outside the lines, that's okay. And I'm just going to round him off. So I've now cut my carrot. And when I open him up, that's what he makes, a cute carrot. Isn't that so stinking cute? I love it. It's darling. So just real quick, here's my carrot top. I'm going to ink it up. I've got my green honeycomb paper, HoneyPOP paper, and you can see my lines and my arrow right here. I'm going to put my stamp, my arrows in the same direction as the arrows on the HoneyPOP paper, and because I've already got a straight line, I'm just going to line it right up to that and stamp. Pull it off. I'm going to cut a straight edge. Leaving me the perfect edge for next time I want to stamp. I've got my straight edge already here, so I'm not even going to cut on that line, and then I would just trim him right out. Okay, Really, really simple to do. And you don't always have to use HoneyPOP stamps. You can use anything that's going to be a symmetrical stamp, and you just stamp half of it. The key is to make the most out of your HoneyPOP paper to keep your lines nice and straight. And again, I save this piece for the very, very last piece that I cut. That way I never forget to line it up. But if you do use this piece first, that's okay. Just remember, your glue lines always have to be horizontal and not vertical. You want to keep your glue lines horizontal and stamp that way. Okay? So I'm going to show you some samples. And I've got lots of these. So we have done the cute little Easter card, and we have cut him out. So with the Inky Antics stamp sets, they always give you several different stamps to decorate the front of your card with, as well as the inside of your card with, and then a lot of cute sentiments. They give you a lot. They're $11.95, and they'll be on a YouTube Yummy, so they'll be on sale. But for your $11.95, even not on sale, they are a tremendous value. I'm gonna open it up, and there's my carrot. Isn't he so cute? Okay, so there's one. I've got the chickie. So this is another set, and when you open them up, you get the egg. And here's another chickie. We orientated the card a little different. Okay, so this way when you open him up, there's your egg. Darling, huh? Here is another carrot, done a little differently. And here we actually popped up our cute little bunny. We stamped him twice and cut him out and popped him up. And then we've got the caterpillar. Another set that comes with an apple, and it says, just inching by and thought I'd say hi. You open them up. To you, dear friend, the apple of my eye. Isn't that so cute? Okay, and another caterpillar where he's holding the apple. Aren't they just darling? And one more chickie. So that is how HoneyPOP paper works. It's a three-dimensional paper that allows you to stamp or die cut and then cut it out and add a lot of dimension to your paper. You can either use it in the center of your card. Don't forget, gotta give a gusset. You've gotta rescore that card and give it a gusset. So in the center of your card, or you can use it as the front of your card, where it permanently stays open. We've glued it down so it's permanently opened. Okay, we've talked about what stamps to use. You can use almost any stamp out there on the market, but the Inky Antics has made it easy for you. This is the frog with the cute little toadstool, and here it is. You would cut half of it and open it up, and it makes just the most darling little toadstool for your frog to jump off of. So Inky Antics makes, oh my gosh, at least 20 different sets, and we've got them all. We also have all the Inky Antics paper. And like I said, I was going to show you the colors, and there's a lot of them. So we've got brown, and we've got green, orange, yellow, red, ivory, goldenrod, light blue, lilac, black, pink, and white. And then there's also magenta over here. Can't forget magenta. And then there's a specialty one where it is a rainbow color throughout the entire pack. And you would have 4 cute little balls for the elephant that he's standing on. You would open it up and it would have red and green and yellow and blue all the way through it. And that's a new pack for Inky Antics. We talked about die cutting with it and how to use the steel rule dies here versus your wafer thin dies, and that you can use all of the movers and shapers that Sizzix sells. They sell a ton of movers and shapers, and the newest one by Stephanie Bernard. These are just so stinking cute. I love, we use this one here for this card here. Right there. Cute, huh? And here's the little butterfly. We cut half of the butterfly, open him up, and he's ready to put down and add antenna and a little bling to him. Really cute. When you are stamping, you absolutely can use ink or you can use a Versamark. Either way, you just want to be able to see your guidelines when you're stamping on the HoneyPOP paper. And when you cut it out, you always want to try and leave yourself a nice straight edge, which is what I continually do. I continually cut out to leave me a nice straight edge. And that the HoneyPOP paper needs to be running in a horizontal fashion. And they give you the cute little guides right there to tell you so you don't forget. But if you do and you cut that first, don't forget, just horizontal lines. All right, well, we have learned a lot today. I want to thank you all for joining me and dealing with my little thumb that's in a Band-Aid. I'm going to scroll on up and say, hey, this is Stacy at Scrapbooking Made Simple. All of these items, the honeycomb paper, the HoneyPOP stamps, movers and shapers, all of that's going to be on sale at scrapbooking-made-simple.com, and they'll be on sale for 1 week after the original load date of this YouTube. I know it was long, but I sure hope you learned something. There's a lot of information out there about the HoneyPOP paper, but I don't know that any one YouTube really encompassed all of it, so I'm hoping I was able to do some of that for you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Bye.